Hello everyone and welcome to this presentation on the grammar contents of Unit 5. In this presentation we will cover the conditionals and I hope you find it useful. Well, first of all, let me start by providing you with examples as to the use of conditionals in English. We can use the conditionals to express different things. We can say what actually happens. For example, if you leave the toothpaste open, it gets dry. That's what actually happens. We can also use conditionals to talk what could happen or what will happen in the future or what is likely to happen. And we could say things like, if you don't study, you are bound to fail your exam. By now, I'm sure you must be familiar with this expression, right? So this is something that we can use with conditionals too, not just will, okay? Also, we can use conditionals to talk about what would happen. We can say things like, if there weren't a lockdown. Lockdown, I remind you that this word means confinamiento. So if there weren't a lockdown, I would be having a drink with friends in the outside, right? Or we can also use conditionals to explain what would have happened in the past and say something like, if you had told me about your problem, I would have helped you to solve it, okay? So these are all the things that we can express with conditionals. And obviously each of these sentences deal with a different conditional. But for the sake of clarity, we're going to try and cover the conditionals one by one, okay? Well, we're going to start, and in this first video, we're going to cover the zero conditional and the first conditional. Why? Because zero and first conditionals are what in English we call real conditionals. And in the second video, we will move on to the second and the third. Okay? Why? Because those other two conditionals are referred to in English as unreal conditionals. Okay? But again, in this video, we're going to focus on conditional 0 and conditional 1. Okay? First conditional. Okay, let's start with zero conditional. Now, why do we use this conditional? Well, normally this is again a real conditional and we use it to express universal truths, instructions, and orders. Maybe this is clear. It will be more clear if I show you some sentences. If I show you the usage, okay, the actual usage of the zero conditional. Now, what do I mean by universal truths? For example, you can say something like this. If you leave the toothpaste open, it gets dry. Okay? That's a universal truth. We can also use zero conditional to express instructions, right? To give instructions. When the water boils, remove from heat. That's a conditional. That's a zero conditional. Or we can use the zero conditional to give orders. As soon as you finish, let me know. Now, as you can see, in the first case, we use an if clause. The conditional is formed using if. But in English, you can use other particles apart from if. You don't necessarily need to build the conditional with if. You can use when, or you can use as soon as. And it's still a conditional, okay? Well, let's go back and go to formation. How do you form the zero conditional? Well, it's very simple. It's easy peasy lemon squeezy, and as this lady right here says. In the conditional clause, we use the present, all right? If you don't wash your socks, they smell bad. In the result clause, we also use present simple. So we have present and present. Easy peasy. This zero conditional is really easy to form. The only thing you need to remember is that we use a present simple here and a present simple there. And that's all. Okay? Regarding formation. And now, we're going to move on to examples. So I'm going to provide you with some more examples on this. If you don't wash your socks, they smell bad. This sentence might be already familiar to you. We have another one. If you heat water to 100 degrees, it boils. All right, as you can see, present, present. Another example, you need to do exercise if you want to get fit. That's another zero conditional. As you can see, there's present there and present here. As you can see, in this particular example, there's no comma. Why? Because we inverted the order of the conditional. Now, in this case, we're placing the if clause at the end, okay? So when we do that and the if remains in the middle, we don't use comma, right? Comma. So in this case, where the if clause is at the beginning, we have a comma. When the if clause comes afterwards, we don't have a comma, all right? Remember that, especially when we're writing. We move on. If you're looking down to your phone in the street, you don't see what happens around you, all right? Another example. You can't go out until your mother calls. Now, remember that apart from the an if clause, we can use another particle instead of if. We can use until, as in this case. We can use when. We can use as soon as, or we can use in case. And all of them are zero conditional. All of them. All right? So when you're not respectful, people don't respect you. As soon as you finish, let me know. Take your umbrella in case it rains. As you can see, in this case and in this case, there's no comma because the conditional clause comes afterwards. All right? Okay, well, that's all regarding zero conditional. Remember, this conditional is used to express universal truths, instructions, and orders, etc. And we use present in both cases, right? In both clauses, both in the conditional clause and in the result clause. All right? Okay. So we're going to go back and we're going to cover the first conditional now. Okay? Now, this first conditional, as we have seen at the beginning of this presentation, it's also a real conditional. And we use it to express things that are real, possible, or impossible situations in the future. All right? So, I'm going to explain this with examples. We can use a first conditional to explain, for example, what will happen, right? We can say something like, if it doesn't rain, we'll go on a camping trip. So that's something real. That's something that we will do in the future if it doesn't rain. Okay? That will happen. Now, moving on to the second one, instead of using will, in this case, I've decided to use be likely to. We already know this expression. So we could say something like, if citizens don't follow the instructions, more situations like this one are likely to happen. Right? Si los ciudadanos no siguen las instrucciones, es probable que más situaciones de estas se repitan. Right? So that's a first conditional, but instead of using will, I'm using be likely to. And moving on to the last example, in this case, I've decided to use the future phrase is unlikely to. All right? So I would say, if everyone cooperates, another medical crisis is unlikely to happen. Si todo el mundo coopera, es improbable que suceda otra crisis médica. Okay? So this is another example of a first conditional clause. As you can see, we don't necessarily need to use will. We can use other types of future, right? Well, let's move on to formation. How do we form the first conditional? You already know, as this gentleman right here is saying, I'm sure you're already familiar with how to form the first conditional. In the conditional clause, in the if clause, we use the present simple. Sorry, not the present simple. We use a present, okay? If she doesn't cooperate, in this case it's present simple. But we don't only use present simple. We can use present continuous if we want in the first clause, in the conditional clause. And we use a future in the result clause. Will Well, yes, will, but not only will. As we have seen in the previous slide, we can use other future phrases and other forms of the future, not necessarily will. Okay, so this is the how to form the first conditional. Now we're gonna now we're gonna have a look at more examples, okay, of use of the first conditional. If the photos are good, I'll send them to you. If you don't do the housework, you'll sleep in the balcony. If she doesn't get here soon, she's bound to miss the concert. As you can see in the first two examples, I've decided to use the future will, but in this third case, I've decided to use the expression, the future phrase, be bound to, and I'm able to do that, and it's still first conditional. Another example: if I don't get paid properly, I'm not going to do my job. Instead of will, I've decided to use be going to. Another one: she's not going to buy the new model until the price has down a bit. Okay, in this case, I have decided to change the order. I have brought the conditional clause to the end. As you can see, I've decided to use the particle until, and instead of the present simple, I'm using the present perfect. So it's not present simple and future with will, not necessarily. You can use different types of presents and different types of futures in the first conditional, okay? And here you have some more examples in which I have inverted the order. I have placed the conditional clause at the end, and that's why I haven't used a comma. All right? I'll be ready as soon as I finished my tea. I'll finish when you stop annoying me. I won't accept the job unless they offer me flexible hours. Okay? And finally, I would like to comment a little on pronunciation. Native speakers, when they are using, first conditionals, when they speak, they tend to use contractions. So I really, really recommend that you should try contractions and use them, okay? But some of them might be a little tricky to use. So that's why I have included how to pronounce them in the presentation. So the only thing you have to do to listen to how to pronounce each of those contractions is to, you need to click on play and you will hear I'll, you'll, will, they'll, she'll, he'll, it'll. Okay? Well, this is just a question of practice, as this woman right here is doing. So keep on practicing until you get it. Okay? And that's all for the first video. In the next video, we're going to cover the second, the third, and mixed conditionals is the last type of conditionals that we will cover. It's very interesting, and it allows you to express different ideas. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.